Nerds for Yang.
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds! So nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello,
Hello,
now with this campaign, bang, dang, it's and Drew, come roll with the YangGang.
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Welcome, David Kim, to the show. We should have had you on a long time ago since you're so active in the YangGang, but for whatever reason, the calendars never lined up. But now we've got you, so we got to make up for lost time. How are you, sir?
Good. Thank you so much for having me. I know I was wondering the same thing. I thought, oh my gosh, Nerds for Humanity. I have to get on that. I wonder when it's going to happen. You know what? We'll just have all the stars align, and today happened to align. So
Yeah.
thank you for having me. Yeah, I've heard so many great things about the show. I love it. I've watched it, and I was just gonna say, like, I love the format and how the conversations are so natural on your show. And so I'm looking forward to this. Let's do it.
Yeah, I am as well, David. And it's a strange thing in that it's not like, basically what happened was someone from your team emailed me and said, hey, David should be on your show. And I was like, sure, let's do it. But I think it might have been one of those things where each party was waiting for the other party to make the first step forward. So I'm glad your team took the initiative.
Yes, I hope this is the first of many.
Yeah. So, David, for those who are less familiar with you,
yes.
Although I suspect a lot of people that are watching this know of you already, since you were pretty active in the YangGang, but maybe give us a little introduction to yourself. Like, who is David Kim before he started running for Congress? Like, what was your story?
Yeah. Well, my story, I wasn't really into the political scene at all. So I'm not the type that would ever thought I would be running for office on this big of a scale. And I think it kind of all started back when just being an attorney, I was a small business owner. I owned an entertainment boutique law firm called The Hollywood Lawyer. It still exists today. I sold it to a friend, thehollywoodlawyer.com. And I set that up to focus on providing creative niche legal services at an affordable cost for people in the industry, whether it be writers, actors, songwriters, producers. And so for that, even that was more justice driven, because I had seen a lot of artists being ripped off by their attorneys, being charged $1,000 an hour plus a 5% on top of that. And so it's like, are you kidding me? Like, these are freaking legit, like, top 20 law firms doing this to you. This doesn't make sense. Like, I can do all that shit that they do, like, just as good, if not better. And so it was in that sense of, this is wrong. And so then I set up The Hollywood Lawyer in October of 2014 under great mentors in the industry. And from there, as I became a small business owner, I thought, oh my gosh, there's so many bills to pay. I have student loans over $200,000 from law school. I have all these business payments to make, and just kind of realizing, holy shit, like, this is crazy. Like, if I'm experiencing this, then how about every single person around me? What are they experiencing? And then it sort of opened my eyes, kind of thinking, okay, you know what, let me go do some community work and help out. So then I joined the Los Angeles Tenants Union. I joined the MacArthur Park Neighborhood Council. But then right before that, I was actually campaigning for Kenneth Mejia. And Kenneth Mejia, he ran for Congress for the current same position that I'm running for, against the same incumbent. And I got to know Kenneth just because he was doing a text banking campaign blast, and I got one of his texts, and I read more about him, how he was very kind of a strong advocate for his community, and was really young. And so that made me so curious, just to kind of think, oh my gosh, this is how we do it. We actually start change on the local community level, like what he's doing. And so I actually ended up helping him out on his campaign and for Congress, and I was one of his core team members. He ran as a Green Party member in our district. So this is California's 34th congressional district, LA. In our district, there's less than 1% registered as Green Party members. But in that general election, Kenneth ended up winning 28% of the total vote.
Wow.
And I was like, holy crap, like a huge proportion of Democrats didn't want to vote for their own candidate. And, and I was like, this is fucking like huge. This is huge. It shows you like, although people can't pinpoint exactly and make up a huge list, they know that things are awry, everything's fucked up. And so kind of with that, I was like, Kenneth, come on, you need to run for office again. And he was too tired. He didn't want to run again. And I thought, you know what, somebody's got to run. And so then last year, beginning of fall, threw in my hat. And we actually joined the race pretty late. Our website was launched the first week of October. And here we are now, after months and months of ground legwork. We did a lot. Thank you to Cindy, Min, Luigi, Sue, Mateo, everyone else on that primary team. Everything's slipping from me, but every single one of you guys, thank you so much. And then now we have people that are on the general campaign team: Hannah, Christina, Alexander, Ori, a lot of other people, Dolly. There's too many to mention, but now we're here, and it's just like, holy shit, like kind of like I was thinking about it today. I was rewinding like 8 months ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, I had a normal life back then. In the sense of kind of not being so in terms of experiencing this candidate and campaign thing. Because if I had it, Tom, I would implement democracy dollars now, so we wouldn't have to do any of this campaign shit. It's a circus show, to be honest, a lot of it, when we should really be debating on TV, when we should really be laying down our issues and have people look at us even-handedly, instead of it being a race about who gets to raise the most money, who gets to make their name most, without really having constituents be able to sit down with each platform, with each candidate, and really go things through consciously in that. But yeah, so that's what I did before. I was an entertainment attorney that was helping out on the local level, saw that there was a huge need, that our system was broken in every single area, that it doesn't make sense that a lot of us have 2 to 3 jobs just to make ends meet. And I was like, forget this. And so I actually resigned from my last attorney job. I was the director of music business affairs at a big film studio here. And I thought, you know what, fuck this. Like, so now I'm an immigration attorney. I was watching, I know, a huge change. I was watching the first 2 episodes of Party of Five, the reboot. I don't know if you watched it.
I remember the original. I didn't know they rebooted it.
Yeah, they rebooted it, and I was watching it, and for me, like, justice plays a huge part of who I am, like in every single career path and move I've taken. And I was watching this, and I was crying during both episodes, because the parents are being taken away from their children, and they're being deported, and then the children are left to defend for themselves. And I was like, holy fuck, how in the world is this possible? And so then right now, guess what my job is? I go to immigration courts. Well, the immigration courts are closed now because of COVID-19 quarantine. So for the next few weeks, I won't be able to. And my law firm actually temporarily laid us all off because the immigration courts are closed. But my job right now, pre-COVID-19, was exactly that: going to immigration court every day, defending people, stopping their deportations, or trying to delay it as much as possible. And so I think that's where my moral compass and heart has led me, kind of wherever that justice compass leads me towards. And I feel like I wouldn't have known that I was going to be running for Congress a year ago, 10 months ago. But I think it's kind of always being open to where your heart and where life leads you, because if that's the case, then I feel like there's a strong possibility that you probably need to go down that pathway. So here I am sitting with you talking about my run for Congress.
That's fantastic.
That still amazes me, but you know.
It's surreal. So
Yeah.
you are the official Democratic Party nominee for the California 34th district. Is that fair?
No. So the thing about California, which I feel like should be implemented in all states, is we don't actually have to win in our own primary within the party first. So basically, our primary election is it's for anybody. So everybody and anybody can run, except the top two candidates only get to move on to the general election. So if the top two happen to be a Democrat and a Republican, they move on to the general election. If the top two happen to be both Democrats, those two move on to the general election. So it's unlike where in other states like Washington and Oregon, where you have to win in your Democratic primary or in your Republican primary first to go on to the general. So that's an advantage for us, and our district is very progressive. It's like I think the majority voted Bernie in both elections, 2016, 2020. Our district is probably one of the most progressive in the nation. And so with that being said, it allows us to have more candidates run for office to put certain issues on a larger radar and platform and to be able to have that heard. And so that's why you have like my friend Kenneth, who ran as a Green Party member. He got the second most votes in the primary. So then he went up against Jimmy, the incumbent, in the general election. So then for me, we had 5 candidates, Tom. And so of those 5 candidates, 4 were Democrats, 1 was Republican. So the incumbent placed first as a Democrat. I placed second as a Democrat. Francis.
Congratulations! So top 2 out of 5 is pretty awesome.
Yes. So we did a lot of work. And those who were watching and supporting us, thank you so much. We couldn't have done this without you. And yeah, so the third place candidate was Democrat, Francis Yasmin Motowala, amazing woman, leader. Fourth place was Joanne Wright, Republican candidate. Very passionate person who wants to go ahead and tackle the homelessness situation and really help our unhoused neighbors. I got to talk with her. The 5th place candidate, Kiana K. Scott, also Democrat, and she really wanted to run to bring homelessness on the radar as well, because in LA, we actually have 7,000 people living in this small radius called Skid Row in downtown LA. And then in our LA County, we have 60,000 that are unhoused. And so it's a situation that you can't really ignore, but yet our local, state, federal officials continue to ignore it. And it's not just a housing situation, it's of all kinds from different factors in that. And so just to kind of think, all right, we have this problem happening right before us and right next to us. Like on my neighborhoods, I have a lot of unhoused neighbors now, which like, is great in terms of connecting community and getting to know them. But where's their house? Where's their roof? And so to think that our elected officials aren't doing anything, and the fact that our congressman has been in office for several years now, you would think that something would be done, but nothing's being done. And so that's why you see him having 4 challengers in this primary race. Not just one challenger, he had 4 challengers. And I think what myself, the 3rd place, 4th place, and 5th place candidates were able to really connect on is he's got to go. Just it's not a personal thing against him, but our district can't afford another 2 years to wait on somebody to help us out, like whoever it is. And you've had your chance, so now it's time to step out. So with that being said, I've gotten to know Francis, Joanne, and Kiana K. They all do support our campaign. Francis, the 3rd place candidate, she endorsed us earlier this week publicly on Facebook. Yes, and so she's an ally of ours, and I told her I would love to learn from her and continue this friendship that we have. And then for the 4th place candidate, Joanne Wright, the moment I talked with her, she actually sent out an email blast to all of her constituents and said, I officially endorse David. So for this upcoming general election, please vote for him. And then, yeah, so my parents are Republican. And for me, I'm not the type of guy that's like, oh, Democrats, oh, Republicans, oh, Green. I'm not that type of person at all. I'm actually a person that's like, you know what, like these are the issues that are happening. We need to solve this. And I don't know if that comes from my attorney mindset mentality or from the way I saw my parents handle things, because my dad and mom, they served as pastors, kind of handling church situations, but just really looking at the issues as they are and just coming up with meaningful solutions without any politics in play. And so I think that's what Joanne, the Republican candidate, saw. So that's why she sent out that email blast. And then Kiana K as well, she was just saying, David, let me know how I can support you. And so I think we're good, Tom, because collectively, myself, the 3rd place candidate, the 4th place, and 5th place, collectively we represent a total of 48% of the
Oh,
vote.
so close.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So in the general
Yeah.
election,
Right.
I need to just continue to engage, connect with, and build my relationship with all of their constituents. And then we just need to increase the voter base a little bit. And then
Mhm.
also tell some of the incumbent supporters, a majority of the incumbent supporters don't know that he's corporately funded, because they just blindly vote assuming, oh, my congressman is good, my
Mhm.
congress representative is good, my congresswoman is good. And then we have a lot of voters who don't realize what they're doing. And so I think that's the biggest challenge in a way. But then I think it's also the biggest opportunity, though, to connect with each person in that group and to be able to now continue to start building community in that sense, to have us go down a deeper level of awareness where it's like, when we say think of what your actions do or what your speech do, I think now it's taking that to a collective level of, oh, what does my vote really mean? Who am I really voting for? And making that something that's deeper. And so I think we do have a real shot, Tom. Like, seriously.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if it's just you and the incumbent, and if you get all of the people that endorsed you, get their support, and you're basically 50-50, that's pretty much the definition of a coin toss, right?
Yes.
So,
Yes, it
yeah.
is. That's the
So what,
definition of a coin toss. Yeah.
now let me ask you this. Let me just play devil's advocate a little bit. Like,
Okay.
so there's this guy, Jimmy. I mean, it's not like he's been there forever. Like, wouldn't some of his supporters say, like, hey, man, he just got there a few years ago. Like, give the guy some time. You know, it takes a while to get stuff done in DC. You know, why David? Why change out the congressional representative now versus give Jimmy some more time?
Well, I think just for the reasons stated, with the homelessness situation that's going on, if we have local and state zoning laws that, I mean, if you come to the development scene here, it's really messed up where you have local city, county officials taking money from developers.
Mm.
But when you have this going on, you would expect somebody that you that you just elected into office, who had a campaign about being progressive, about fighting for the underdogs, about
Mhm.
fighting for those who were underprivileged and didn't have as many means as other groups of people might. You would expect them to, like, as soon as they get into office, do stuff. But the types of action that he took are creating a national day of, I forget, because it's not that important. I'm not,
Mhm.
but in not to say that that's not important, but in comparison relatively to the issues that our district are facing, like, I don't think that's important on that type of scale. And so it's kind of realizing, dude, you like made this whole big talk about doing this and doing that, about tackling our homelessness situation, and then you get into office and nothing's happened. And rather, if you go to his Instagram pictures or profiles, or is in his stories, he takes these selfies with the squad sometimes, and he says, hey, look, we're in the same room, does that make me count as the fifth member of the squad? Ha 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 ha. So it's like, dude, what are you doing? That's not why you're there for. Like, actually do stuff. And and so I think for us, like, we don't have more time to waste. And like, we've already given him those years in office. And I mean, if you even see AOC, she got into office later than he did, but she's already done more stuff than he has. And to go ahead and, I don't know, to try to be a fifth member of the squad, when, I don't know, just his priorities are, it's very, I think it's just all for the show and the game.
Mm.
um and so I think these career politicians, they start off great and kind of on this great message, and then they, in a way, don't realize what they're doing, and they're living in their bubbles, and they're actually not doing stuff, and then that continues over and over. He's been a state politician before this as well, so
Mm.
he pretty much knows how to play the game. And honestly, for a district like ours, where we're the 10th poorest, it's like, okay, well, we're not that type of district where you can do that. Like, our district really needs help because we're financially bleeding right now.
Mm.
So please help us. And so I think it's more with that. It's not a personal thing, but it's like, all right, we gave you a chance, somebody else, so let's do it.
So let's say you get in there, and you show up in DC, like what would your priorities be? What would you be pushing for? Because the moment you get there, the clock's ticking, and someone else 2 years from now is going to say, David had his chance. Well, so what would you
Yes.
focus on?
Yeah, well, for me, I mean, day one, hitting the ground with UBI, and I mean, Medicare for all. Obviously, we have reps in there; they're fighting for it. But I think, in addition to that, I think because Andrew Yang has already brought that the conversation onto the table, like we need to really move and push for it. And that's really was the last thread and straw for me to throw my hat into the race. Yes, I was ignited by Bernie into 2016. Yes, Kenneth Mejia then ignited it more, and then AOC, and then Marianne Williamson. But then when Andrew Yang came onto the scene, it was like, holy fuck, this has got to be one of the most revolutionary ideas and most progressive, yet people aren't realizing the potential of it. But now hindsight, with COVID-19 happening, people are like, holy crap, like, oh my gosh, jobs don't matter right now. Like like jobs don't matter if if they're non-essential, like they don't matter. And so it's kind of realizing, holy crap, like the urgency of the times right now. And I think if we lose that momentum, then we're going to lose it and wait another 50, 60 years, just like how it was in the House. What was it, 1967, 8, 7, no, 1970, 71? But then we have to wait so many years again. So it's riding on this wave and this momentum and making things pass. And we're at that point where UBI is on the tipping point. Who was the first, not to make it a party thing, but because a lot of people were saying, oh, the Republicans would never be cool with the UBI. Who was the first senator to go ahead and bring that up during COVID-19? I think it was Mitt Romney, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just like, dude, guys, this is where we continue to build that alliance across the aisle, where we continue to connect on that human issue. And don't forget where the bigger picture is, that we're here to fight and help the people. So it's continuing that momentum where we are connected to some point. I mean, Mitch McConnell isn't, but where we're connected at some point with some issues in relation to humanity and our heart and caring and providing that compassion to them. So let's write on that as well. So when we go into DC this new session, we're writing on that, where we're working together. And that's for me, Tom. I mean, for the people on my team, they're aware when we went canvassing and door knocking, I've had every single Republican constituent open their doors saying, I'm not voting for you. You can go away, and then closing their doors and saying, thanks for staying, being persistent. I'm going to vote for you. And so because I know that it's something that's bigger than partisan politics, I am the type of person that can go in there, unite people across the aisle and be like, dude, you know, this is not that type of issue and reason that you're pointing out. This is all bullshit party politics that you're doing right now. And going down on a deeper level, because behind all of that is this fear and insecurity of what some groups might think, or what some institutions might think, or what certain things might happen if they really try to stick with their moral compass and stand up for their voice and really speak it out. And that's where I feel like masses of people in America are crippled with that fear. They're crippled with the fear and anxiety of speaking up for themselves and standing up for themselves. And what Bernie did, what Andrew Yang did, was ignite that and say, hey guys, you guys are important too. You can stand up for yourselves. Now's the time to do it. You have a voice, speak up. And that's what they did and ignited. So it didn't end with their campaign suspending. It only started because now we've been let out of our cages and we're like, holy fuck, what's going on? This can't happen to us. And so it's realizing that. And so now we're starting this as groups, as a mass movement, as people. And that's what's starting to be felt in DC. Some people might say, David, you're a little too optimistic, but no. DC is starting to feel it as well. And the critical mass, I think that theory is, but the more people that are sold into it, not on an intellectual level, but on an intellectual heart level, on a deeper level of awareness and consciousness, that's where we create that ripple effect. So where these elected officials too are realizing, oh shit, you know what? I really didn't feel like a good person voting in that way all those years and not doing certain legislations or supporting it, like, and also empowering them to realize, shit, you can actually stand for the voice that you have. You can say no to those corporate interests that are donating to you. Yeah, you might be afraid that you won't win re-election, but fuck that. Like, standing up for your voice is more important, and it's helping these elected officials realize that at a deeper core. And that's what needs to happen. And that's why I really hoped for Marianne Williamson to go into DC, bust out all of her orb stuff, and help people connect with that deeper, because I think a bigger problem is that our elected officials, they're too controlled by their thoughts, by anxiety, by fear of not being able to win re-election again, of not being able to look a certain way or to be always liked by certain supporters. But it's like, no, fuck that. Listen to your voice, your truth inside, because that's what connects and really connects with people on a deeper level. And it's helping those people in DC realize that. And so yeah, I am ready first day, Tom, to go in to connect on a deeper level out of love, because even me speaking in a louder volume, it's not coming from a place of hatred. It's coming from a place of love and deeper sense of, guys, we can really do this. Do you not see what's going on? We're all coming from this place of fear, and we need to look past that, because beyond that fear is a whole nother world of freedom, love, and power that we can really go into. So then that's why our campaign is called David Kim for Congress, financial freedom, love, and justice for all. Like, that's the world that we can create, and we don't realize that we can. But yeah, so I'm excited to go into DC, Tom. Your question is not an excuse. Like, I mean, it's a great question. It's a great devil's advocate question, but it's like, nah, like, we gave you 3 years, you're done. Like, you're out. We gave you enough time as it is. Like, you claim that you did all of this stuff when you were in the state. Why can't you say that now? Like, you've had 3 years in Congress. So with that being said, I mean, it's a whole different game field now. Now that we have, I think, like 2016, Bernie started it. 2018, Tulsi, Marianne, Andrew, they ignited it even more. And I think this is the time where the bottle's about to pop, and we're in for it. So if you're watching and you're like, huh, should I run for office? Yes, run for office. Now is a time where the people need to run for office. If the government is of the people need to run for office, not people that have been in office for 20, 30 years. Because that's how we really create and foster and continue that democracy that our government and country were founded on. So yeah, thanks.
You are fired up, David Kim. I tell you, man, I love it. I love it. I could totally see if you got over there, you're not a wallflower that's just gonna kind of sit on his hands. You sound like you're ready to shake things up.
Yeah, I'm actually waiting for a debate with the incumbent, but he, like, when my friend ran against him 2 years ago, he never accepted any debate invite. And so but in any case, I mean, I think debating is important. I think putting candidates in a public forum where you're able to ask them questions from both sides, to both sides, and be able to really gauge and get to know each candidate along the campaign trail. Because I don't think this whole thing of 2 months, 60 days, 90 days before election, blitz you with texts, blitz you with emails, blitz you with all mails, and like, based on whichever names you see more than you vote. I don't think that should be the process. I think the process should be democracy dollars, where we're not focused on trying to raise funds from constituents in our district. We actually don't do any fundraising asks to our district constituents because we're the 10th poorest district. So we don't do any donation asks in our district. But it's kind of getting rid of all that time that's wasted, because we have, I know these campaign systems will hate me for saying this, but you have all these campaign political software and systems taking all of the money with these tech companies, with streamlining from the website, text banking, phone banking, and that's where all the campaign money is going. I mean, that's its whole industry in and of itself. But if you were to eliminate all of that, where the candidates don't have to spend 99% of their time trying to fundraise or trying to get their name out, but then where they can spend 100% of their time talking with constituents on a person-to-person level, being able to craft their policies more with local community experts who have been on the ground working in that for years, being able to systematically and carefully, thoughtfully plan out their campaign, while also being able to share who they are, share what their background is, share who they are their character, their background, what their vision and goals are with each constituent, and then having those constituents, after observing each candidate during a 4 or 5 month process, then cast their vote. That's democracy. Like that's democracy. Like none of this corporately run and funded elections in government. And it's a real problem. Like I'm not just saying corporate because it's the cool word to say, but it's unfortunate. Like it's the corporate interests are really killing the people right now, the prioritization of it. So
well, let me ask you this, David. You came in top 2 out of 5, so there was a 60% chance that you would not have come into the top 2. What do you think resonated with the voters in the primaries? Because it sounds like some of the other folks that were running were also progressive and keen on helping the district. What was it? Was it UBI? Was it a different kind of point of view or a different approach? What was it that kind of landed you in that top 2 spot?
that's a great question. See, this is why I love your show, because I know, no, I'm saying it because I was watching your past shows with other candidates and guests, and I was like, Tom asks questions that the other podcast interviewers wouldn't ask. So that's actually a great question. I haven't had that question before, but I think now, kind of looking back hindsight, we actually weren't able to articulate it ourselves, but this general cycle, our new campaign finance director and chief strategist, Hannah, she actually kind of observed what was going on, kind of was gauging the situation, and then pulled that out and was like, oh, our theme is community right now. And I think that's what we actually did start off on last cycle without being able to articulate that in words, where we were actually focusing on each community in different communities where I have many friends who are that grew up in Boyle Heights kind of from such a young age. So that's a certain part of our Los Angeles community.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just going out to their events more, going out to their parades, going out to, I was able to be, I think, being able to connect with them in their different meetings and events that they have for the community, and getting to know what the issues are without coming up with a platform first and then saying what the platform is, but connecting with each community, seeing what the issues are, and then creating your platform around that, because who are you to say, because you haven't been living in that community. And I think that's what we were very aware of and conscious of. And so it's surprising, like even in Boyle Heights, I was the only non-elected official speaking at their Dia de los Muertos event. Everybody was a state senator, a state representative, whatever. And the fact that they were able to give me that platform, I was very touched. And I just talked about universal basic income, and I was saying, dude, like I know that the per capita income of this neighborhood is $15,000. What would $12,000 do for you? That's amazing. How many of you are taking care of your parents? Mostly everybody in the crowd lifted their hands. How many of you are taking care of your children? And like none of them are getting paid for or compensated for that. So going to these different communities and saying, look, we can actually pass it and push for it. And at first they're looking at me like I'm a joke. They're like, what, you're gonna give us free money? And I'm like, no, that's what we can actually fight for and give ourselves free money for, in the sense of, because we are citizens and shareholders, and the government is supposed to be for the people, and that's what we could be doing, and kind of activating that fire and spark in those communities that aren't politically engaged. Because believe it or not, Tom, even in our district, we have 300,000 that are registered voters. In our total population, I think it's 600 to 700,000 that are in our district. This past primary election was actually a big turnout because 100,000 people voted. So, but then still of that, that means 1/7 of the population voted for a primary election. If we can continue increasing that, then imagine what kind of country we could have in that sense, where more people are engaged. And so I think for us, we were focusing on each community. For the Koreatown community, what we did was, my dad's actually a pastor, and he pastors a congregation up in Northern California, in Santa Clara. And he actually sent out a letter to all of the pastors of every Korean megachurch in Koreatown. And so starting the first Sunday of January up until the Sunday right before March 3rd primary election, every Sunday I was scheduled to speak at 2 or 3 services at a different church. And so I was talking to a few thousand people every week in terms of the Korean community. And so it was a little weird, Tom, to be honest, because I'm not used to any of this. And so it was a little weird because after going to so many church services towards the end of February, when I went to the Korean market in my shorts and my t-shirt and my flip-flops, somebody was like, "Hey, you're that congressman candidate." And I was like, "Oh crap." Because for Korean people, like there's this culture and sense of, and I know my dad was like, but anyhow, so we were focused and intentional with each community. And so that's what we did. And then we also did a lot of grassroots canvassing. We knocked on doors every weekend with the few volunteers that we had. We also kind of strategically, in the beginning, I think like any first time candidate, they end up wasting their money on a lot of things. We did too in the beginning because it was our first time running one, although I had helped out on one. But then, I mean, kind of hindsight, we made the best decisions at the right time, at the right moments. And so I don't regret any of the decisions that we did make in the past. But I think one of the really smart decisions that we made was taking out a loan for $13,000 because I think I watched Heidi's episode with you before. She had talked about in order to get into her voters sample ballot booklet, she had to pay, I think, several $100s with that. We have to pay $13,000 to have a 250-word candidate statement in our voter sample booklet. And so when I saw that, I was like, holy crap, how in the world is any regular person be able to run? Like, I don't even have the money for that. Our campaign has no money for that. And so, but then it was just, I went home, Tom, and I was like, I was driving home from the LA County Registrar Recorder's office, and I thought, no, but we need to get our message out. I think it's less about like who I am, but I think it's more about this platform and that we're out there, that we're part of this movement that has rised up in different parts of America, and that we're here too, like in this district of LA. Because what I saw online were a lot of people saying, "Oh, who supports UBI in my area? Who supports these issues in my area?" And so for me, I wanted to get the word out, like, "Yo, we're here too. We're in your district in Los Angeles." And so it was more of that. And so we ended up, after 1 week of talking with my parents all day on the phone, and my campaign manager Cindy, and different people, and my brother, we decided to take out a loan because we thought it was very important. And so we paid the $13,000, and 3 weeks before primary election time, every single registered voter gets that booklet. And the way we rationalized it, Tom, was in order to send out a mailer, let's say to even 100,000 voters, that's 50 cents in postage for each mailer you send. So that's $50,000 right there, just in postage. You haven't even talked about the printing or like the labor put in putting the address labels on there. Like, we're not even talking about that. Just postage alone is 50,000. So what my campaign manager, what my brother, what my family members and campaign team members at the time thought, you know what, this is actually worth it. Because if we're able to get our message into every single registered voter's household by only paying 13,000 as opposed to 50,000, then we should do it. And so we took out a loan, we paid 13,000, and believe it or not, we opened the booklet, Tom, and the only candidate in our race that had a statement in the fucking booklet was us.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
baby.
So out of all 5 candidates, we were the only ones that had a statement. And it was, the questions that we had before making that decision was, do we do it? Like, half of people throw away the booklet, but then the half that doesn't throw away their booklet, they probably pick it up to skim. But then even the fraction of those that pick it up, probably they're reading every statement. So like, we had all these different discussions, and I'm glad that we made that decision, because now we're here strong second. We placed we had as many as double in votes as the third place candidate. So I think we ended up at 22%. But in any case, so like we ended up with a strong second, and I think with grassroots campaigns, it's possible if you're able to make the moves strategically and thoughtfully. And that's why I think every campaign should have a strategist, like we now added and created a new position for it. Hannah stepped in, but should have a strategist to be able to make the smart moves, because we can show the people that it's no longer a time and age where money wins everything, because we actually have a brain and we actually have a heart. And I think if we're able to connect with these two things in every single person that lives in our district, then that's how we win a race. And so I think it's getting to that, connecting with the heart and the mind, and really being able to be on the same page with everybody in our district. And I think that's what made us win in our text banking campaigns that we started in January. That's what we also communicated in our messages. So thanks for asking that.
Yeah, no, it sounds like that booklet was you know, when you look back on that primary, that booklet being in there must have been a needle mover for sure.
Yeah. We organized the message in financial, so it was basically a basic profile of myself. And then our campaign platforms broken down into 3 categories: financial freedom, love, and justice. So under financial freedom, what does that look like tangibly? It looks like UBI, universal basic income. And then in parentheses, we put something that MLK fought for right before he was assassinated. And so just to be able to show people that, yo, this is not a joke. Like, it legitly almost was about to pass in Congress, in the House. And then we actually had civil rights leaders like MLK, the late MLK, fight for it. And so it was kind of getting that message out and saying to people, look, guys, like, we can do this. And it's more about the platform, because it's not about myself, it's more about the movement and what values we represent in that. And that's what Andrew Yang also did with his campaign. It's not about him, it's about the movement, it's about connecting with humanity first. And so I thank you, Andrew, if you're watching this. If not, that's cool, I forgive you. I don't know, I don't have your official endorsement yet, but he took that. Yeah, no, we took a picture together, and he tweeted me a couple months ago and said, if you're supporting freedom dividend, I support you. But that's cool, but I need an official one, so I'm still waiting for that. But yeah.
Well, you're not the only one. A lot of people are waiting, and I threw a note out to him as well. Not that, I don't know him personally. He's just been on the show a few times. But I was like, hey man, there is a perception that a lot of folks who've been fighting on the front lines are not getting as much air support, as they could. And it would be, and I said, look, I'm sure you're super busy with the coronavirus kind of relief stuff, and you got a lot going on, but hopefully the team will have more endorsements coming soon, hopefully.
Yeah,
fingers crossed on that. But I mean, you've been supporting Andrew for a while now. Like, what was your Yang story like? Was it a post Rogan cohort, or?
Well, no, I'm going to be super honest. So I knew about Andrew Yang before. Actually, before I get to this one, Andrew, if you are watching this, endorse Heidi first, though, because she needs it, because her primary election is next month. So our general is a couple months away. So please endorse Heidi first. But in any case, going on to my Yang experience, I knew about Andrew before the whole Joe Rogan podcast, because my boyfriend's he's on top of his current events and stuff. And so I actually kind of came to know about him before. And to be honest, I was very judging. I was like, are you serious? Like, you're really running on this? And so I just completely discarded, like, I think I was on his Instagram, and I remember rolling my eyes and going to a different feed. And then he kept on popping up, and then universal basic income kept on popping up in my feed. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, let me actually do some research on universal basic income. And then I went down this rabbit hole. And as I was going down this rabbit hole, I think that's around the whole time where Joe Rogan's podcast had happened. I think it's around that time I officially became kind of YangGang at heart, and I became interested, and then started ordering campaign merch. I'm trying to find my hat, but and stuff. But yeah, started ordering campaign merch and supporting the campaign, and joining the YangGang. So
cool. Well, let me ask you this. You mentioned like you as a first-time candidate, you made some mistakes and you learned kind of the hard way. Clearly getting into the booklet was a very smart move that paid off and took some risks up front. What were some of the things that if you gave yourself kind of went back in time and gave yourself advice at the beginning of your campaign, you would say, hey, David, like, don't do these things? What are some common mistakes that you may have made that you learned from now in hindsight?
Always check in with your team. I think that's a good one. Always check in with your team, even if they are a very small team. And just as an example, I know we had launched this big fundraising event on November 20th. And because I used to work in the industry, we had it kind of like, oh, we're going to have singers and artists and performances and an MC and a schedule. And we had to pull the plug because it was just something that wasn't able to be done given the factors involved, and there were a lot of them. And so kind of realizing, you know what, this is actually not an individual effort. It is actually a team effort, a campaign effort, a movement effort, a people effort. So when we're crafting our policies and fine-tuning them more, when we're pushing for certain agendas, we really need to check in with the experts. We need to check in with the team, whether that be members of the team or members of the community. And I think that's the first thing. Number two, try not to spend money as much as possible in the beginning, because you don't know what needs may arise. But then also, it's not to say that we didn't do our research, because again, I think given the circumstances we had, we did the best we could. But just to be very conscious of what you're spending it on and how you're spending it, because, and let's say if we had saved on our money spending before, maybe we wouldn't had to have taken out the 13,000 loan, because we did raise 24,000. So there's that. So I would say, number one, consult always with as many people. Number two, spend wisely. So
what were some of the things that you spent money on that at the time seemed very reasonable and rational, but now in hindsight, you're like, yeah, I don't know if we got maximum ROI out of that one?
Yeah, so we were paying, I'm not going to say their name, but we were paying this this campaign website database management system company almost $1,000 a month, just for hosting of our website, plus access to their 2016 voter list, plus an internal email system where you can send up emails up to 15,000 people, plus this mass texting system, which was completely irrelevant because in political campaigns you can't use mass texting. So I don't even know why they offered it as part of their service. But so we were paying them $1,000 a month, and that really $1,000 a month for several months is a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, but then that's to say also, though, like with companies like PDI, with NPG Van, with L2, to buy the same data, like you're looking at anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000, $17,000 that you're paying just to obtain data only. And so the company that we signed up with, because they included website, their own management system, and the ability to actually export spreadsheets and emails, because a lot of these other companies like PDI, they don't allow you to export the emails. They have you email within their own system, and they charge you 1 cent every constituent you email. So it becomes, you rack up this huge bill. So this is where all the campaign money is being spent. But then if you're able to do it smartly, you're able to cut down on the costs. And so for me, it was just kind of thinking, okay, we have this 70,000 voter list for emails, but we're only able to send it to 15,000. And because of the system capacity that we have on what the max number of recipients we can send the email to. Like, are we rotating this 70,000 email voter list like every 2 weeks? Like, and that's what we were doing. But then, I mean, this is where I'm grateful to Mateo. He came along. He was like, why are you doing it like that? You should just switch to MailChimp and then downgrade that service to just website hosting for that company where you're only paying 35 a month. And now you can just pay MailChimp to do all of that. And now you can email up to 75,000 people all at once. And so that's where it was like, see, we didn't have a tech person. Nobody told me that. Like, no one in our team told me that. And so it was just kind of like, this is where the learning curve sort of starts to happen, where it's like, all right, if I see anybody else that's running for office, I need to tell them that. Don't spend money on that. This is where you need to spend money. So if you're a candidate and you're watching this and you haven't had your primary yet, please shoot me questions. Like if you're like, what's the best text banking right now? What's the best whatever? I'm totally I will give you all the advice and feedback that I can. So, but yeah, you have to be smart about it.
Yeah, I never realized how there's a whole cottage industry of vendors that basically make their living off of off of candidates, many times first-time candidates who
Oh my
they
God.
probably convince, like, you have to use this, otherwise we're the only one that will let you do this. So that's
Yes.
why you have to pay us $1,000 a month, kind of thing.
Yo,
Yeah.
quick story on that one, Tom. I think, and these companies know that. These companies
Yeah.
totally know that, and then they act with their speech, and when they're talking to you, they make it sound like if you don't sign up with them, you're gonna lose the race.
Mhm.
And so now, I mean, I have all team members on calls and whatnot, but there was this one company talking about, I guess they sort of provide similar services to Reach, and we were on the phone with them, and at the end we asked what the price was, and I think it was 1,000 a month, 1,500 a month. and my strategist was like, all right, no thank you, you don't like, you are we your case study?
Mhm.
Would you like us to do it for free as your case study? And so I think for candidates that are watching, beware of these campaign companies too, because some of them do bring good value, but a lot of them don't. So just be wary. Have your campaign manager or extra staff member on the line with you to sniff out bullshit, because
Yeah.
unfortunately, I mean, people are scrapped for money and they do what they can to try to raise money. And I mean, obviously, this is the way you should do it. But and this is again another reason why we need to fix our system. So
Yeah, it's sad. It's sad how candidates can get chewed up and spend a lot of money on these vendors, and help these companies make money. But obviously, that's not the way the democratic system should work. And
yeah,
I guess that's an advantage that incumbents have. Like, they know what to, the best stuff and how to do it, and then the first timers often get chewed up by this minefield of opportunities to spend money where you probably didn't need to. And so I'm glad that you guys, it sounds like you've course corrected quickly, and you're not doing the $1,000 a month deal for that.
yeah,
A little bit like buying a car. It sounds like they're like, oh, you need the rust proofing and the
yeah.
special upholstery protection, and the winter door floor mats and everything.
Yeah.
So
It's like, no, I just want my car washed.
yeah, no, I don't want any of this stuff. So let me ask you this, David. We're going to start to take some viewer questions in a second.
Okay.
But before we get to them, I wanted to get your sense of, like, for the campaign going forward. I presume you are still raising money, and if you are, what will you do with those funds? Like, where are you going to deploy? Is it around people? Is it around advertising? Around technology? Like, what's it going to go towards?
Great question, and great question. So what the immediate use of our funds would be for now is we actually need the 2020 voter data, because that will actually help us be able to target our campaigns more.
Okay.
So where we're not text banking a huge mass kind of category of people, when we could actually be targeting with certain lists and be more strategic about that. So that would actually help us save more costs if we're able to get a 2020 voter list. So to get one from L2, we got a deal and we will be spending it towards that. So we need $9,000 for that. So $9,000. If you can help us raise it this episode, thank you. And then we actually need to update all of our equipment. I mean, today it looks like my computer is letting me look nice on your show today. But I mean, generally this computer really doesn't work out. And so we do need to upgrade our technology, because now that we've actually adjusted to this COVID-19 quarantine landscape where our campaigning now has to be all digital, we actually do need to upgrade our equipment in that. So we need about $1,600 for that. And then I forget what the other line items were, but Hannah, she's probably chatting away right now. She's our finance director and chief strategist. She'll go ahead and give you a breakdown more of what those comments are. But yeah, and we will also put out an infographic of where any immediate donations that are being given now will be being spent towards. That's a great question.
Right on. All right. So folks, if you want to learn more about David, he's at davidkim2020.com. You'll be able to donate there. And I guess what's super interesting is you're no longer this long shot UBI guy. You're going to be on the ballot for the general, which is so cool. So yes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And yeah, that's and congrats to your team. Before we get to the audience questions, I have one last thing I was curious about. So I've heard Andrew say this himself, which was like, oh, well, you know, going from CEO of a company or organization to a political candidate, it's not a one-for-one transition, because you're busy basically, you know, doing interviews and raising money, but you're not as kind of operationally involved as maybe you might have been like when you were running or a partner at your firm. I was wondering, do you experience that as well? Like this whole dichotomy of like candidate versus CEO of the campaign? How does that play out for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think last primary cycle, I would say, I think the experience was completely different. I think last primary cycle, it was still this small business type of similarities that were going into play, because to me, it seemed like that, because I had managed the Hollywood Lawyer, founded it before, and run that own business. And so to me, it was similar to that CEO type of kind of responsibilities and mindset. But then I think with our general cycle starting, like Tom, our team grew from it quadrupled like 5 times in size. And so that's why it took us a full month to reorganize everything. I know that there were a lot of eager people out there saying, David, we want to text, make a volunteer. How do we do it? We're like, okay, we need to reorganize the structure right now, because we were at a bandwidth of less than 10 people. Now we have like 30, 40, 50 people reaching out. And so we had to restructure that. But I think what's kind of taking place is now we're shifting into that, where now my team members are saying, no, David, you're not going on this call with us. And like, they're like, no, David, you're not doing that. Stop contacting the restaurant owners. Like, we have somebody that's doing that. Stop doing that. And I'm like, okay, I mean, this is great. Then I can just focus on like person-to-person connection more, and building within the community and connecting with people, and then also crafting policies and issues more, and doing podcasts and interviews and prepping for them more. And so it was just like, now I'm in this transition process where it's like, all right, okay, I know it's not personal. I don't know why I'm taking it as personal. No, I'm not. I'm kidding. But it's like, all right, I mean, if you guys can have somebody take care of that, like even yesterday, one of our new data guys was like, David, you shouldn't be doing that. I should be doing it. And you took the work from me. And so, so I think we're going into that process where now I can just really focus on connecting with each person that I meet along the campaign trail, and really be able to tune in more on a deeper level. And so I'm super grateful for that.
Awesome. Yeah, it's I'm imagining that will be a hard transition for a former small business owner, because you're so used to having complete control, you know, from top to bottom.
You know me.
Well, yeah, it's I think a lot of us have to struggle with that when we kind of move into different kind of leadership roles, and we're not
Yeah.
able to get really into the details, because a lot of what made us successful was that we were into the details. And now for you to go to that next level, you got to let go a little bit, and that's
That's
hard.
what I'm learning.
Yeah.
That's what I'm learning, to be honest. Yeah.
All right, here's the first audience question from Zishan. He was can you speak about electric versus gasoline cars? He heard that California is changing a law about, maybe is it about perhaps emissions, or whether or not, subsidies for electric cars. Like, what's your take on car technology and transportation in general, if we kind of zoom out a bit?
Yeah, I mean, in regards to electric cars, I mean, we're eventually going to get to a point where gasoline cars shouldn't be sold, because it just contributes more to the climate change. And I think what's awesome to see in California, and a lot of people are like, oh, California, they F up everything, but it's like, nah, like in this whole COVID-19 process, like despite whether you like Gavin Newsom or not, like California actually has been doing, I mean, there's a lot more ways that it can definitely step up with rent freeze and mortgage suspension and in other ways, but it's actually been one of the leading states in how to respond to COVID-19 in that sense. And so I think kind of comes with that, with electrical cars, like they're building out, like if you come here, and you have an electric car, like you can pretty much plug your car anywhere because they're building it out so much. And where eventually now different cities are also now passing regulation where there has to be an electrical car port station within so much of a radius, and where that's arising. And so eventually, I mean, we're going to get to that point where gasoline cars will be phased out and should be banned. But then also, with that being said, we need to make it affordable for everybody to be able to do. And so those are the kind of things that, I mean, our government and elected officials need to work on, and moving towards that renewable energy. So, and electric cars. And because, I mean, that's the only logical step forward. I don't know why anybody else would want to keep gas cars around. So
let me ask you this. I was in LA a couple of years ago for a work thing, and I had to go. It wasn't that far, but I think it was only like 20 miles, but it took forever. Like the LA traffic kind of reputation precedes itself. And I was coming, because for the last few years I've been living in Europe, in Switzerland, where we have a pretty strong kind of train system.
Yeah.
And I was kind of curious, like, what is the deal with mass transportation in California? Like, this very modern state that has a lot of resources and, collects a lot of tax revenue and has a lot of technology. But it seems like, for sure, I see a lot of Teslas on the road, which is great. But it does make me wonder, like, why is everybody driving to work? Like, why aren't there better public transportation options where it's not considered, oh, well, that's only if you can't afford a car? But there are places where public transportation is amazing and it's great, and people would never even think about owning a car. What's your take on, public transportation in general in the States these days? Yeah,
I think it's a matter of, I mean, to be honest, it's a lack of priority and a lack of intention in any of those areas. It's not having kind of this deep-rooted sense of responsibility to the community, responsibility to the environment. I mean, I think a lot of what the politicians do here as well is have a lot of lip service, say that they're self-alleged progressives fighting in this direction. But then if you look at it, then kind of like what you sort of hint is, if that's the case, then why aren't we focusing more on public transportation? Why aren't we focusing on making this more accessible and promoting the services and making it actually, I mean, actually be more of service to the greater people? Because in the sense of, like, if you go to SF Bay Area, the BART system there is way better than the metro system down here. I mean, perhaps it's because of, I mean, the more densely populated areas in San Francisco, Berkeley, and Oakland in that sense, which I get. but then with that, they have more scheduled stops, they have more routes, they have more and so they're able to continue to expand that. LA Metro, they started doing it in recent years, where now they're expanding the purple line, they're expanding the red line, and they're connecting it, but it's still at this point where LA is very it's still, although we preach being green and being healthy and doing all of that, we actually waste a lot too, just with plastic, with everything in all sorts of in areas. And so there should actually be a movement addressing that, where, I mean, there's no need to really have one person a car, because when you're on the freeway, Tom, and you probably noticed it too, every single car, there's only one individual.
Yeah.
And they're driving to or from work. And so that says something about our transit system, that shows something about the mentality of our people that live here, that shows something about kind of where people want to live. Why don't they want to live closer to work? Is it because of the zoning laws and ordinances that are in place, where they feel that they'll be more benefited elsewhere? And like, so there's, I think it's not just one thing, but it's this sort of public investigation in a way, to really kind of go down in the sense of what's causing all of this, and how can we get to the bottom of it and really help kind of LA, where our clouds are very blue now because nobody's been driving.
Right.
Yeah, and like, how can we keep it this way? And whether or not that's allowing our employers to be more flexible with the work week, about working remotely now, knowing that it is possible, whether that be being conscious of carpooling. There's a lot of different carpool efforts that are rising as well, whether that be increasing public transportation. And I think it's also comes down a lot to, it just makes sense to build multi-dwelling units in highly densely populated areas near transportation, but because of how the local zoning laws and regulations are, we're not able to do that. So we needed somebody that's from the federal level to step in and say, hey guys, like, to go ahead and help save the environment and cut down on the cars right now as well. Like, doing this would actually help if we built a lot of multi-dwelling units in these high density traffic areas where the metro public stops are very accessible. Like, let's move towards this type of society and system. But I don't think there hasn't been that strong push at the state politics level for us yet. So yeah.
Makes sense. Sugar Sweet has a question about the Asian American community accepting you as a Democrat, that they can be a tough crowd. What's the reaction been like when you go to those churches?
Yeah,
how have you been received?
It's funny because I think automatically for Asian Christians in that world, in the Asian Christian world, or even in the Asian world, at least in the Korean Asian community here, it's very if you're not Republican, they look at you and they're like, what? You're running for the devil? And it's like, and I'm being honest, like, this is this mentality that we also need to break, where like my parents too, like, we didn't actually talk for about a year and a half, because my dad's a pastor, and I had recently come out to him a few years ago, and so we didn't talk for 20 months, and we only started talking again because I was running for office, and I didn't want him hearing that from somebody else, that his son was running for office, because I just imagined and thought how much their heartbreak would be if they heard that from somebody else and not me. And so then I called them and I said, hey, before anybody told you, I wanted to let you know I'm running for office. And so we actually reconnected after 20 months of not talking. But even with him, he was like, what? Like, why are you running as a Democrat? Like, that's the devil's party. And like, that's what he legitimately said. And like, for him, I mean, I love my parents still and we'll always disagree. But for him, my dad, when Trump was elected, like when that election night, when he won, like my mom and dad were saying like, praise God, like God loves our country. And I was like, oh my gosh, what are you saying? Like, and I mean, I was so tempted to send like a picture of Melania Trump to like my mom, like a naked one, but I didn't. But it was just like, oh my gosh, the Republican, I'm not disparaging the Republican Party at all, but these party mentality systems have to go. Like, I remember as a kid growing up, Tom, where our church would always be getting these Republican pamphlets, and then they would have pictures of Bill Clinton with devil horns, and so that's the propaganda we always received. So now these churches that I started visiting, a lot of them were like, "Oh, why aren't you running as a Republican?" Like after they would meet me after service, and I said, "Oh, it doesn't matter. Like I think right now at this time and age, it doesn't really matter what party you run with, but obviously I don't want to be running on in the same party as Trump is running and is for right now, and I really feel like the people for this district, in terms of like, although I would rather run as a third party member, I can't, because I do want to be realistic about the chances and where the political environment is that we're at right now. So I'm going to run Democrat. And so I think these pastors too, when they were introducing me to these congregations, they had a disclaimer. They were like, all right, so here's David, him. We're not endorsing him. We're not endorsing him. And they would have to say that 2 or 3 times. But then they would say, because he's from our community and he's Korean, we're just letting you know that he's running for office. We're not telling you to vote for him. We're just letting you know. And that's what their disclaimer would be, because a lot of the church members have this mentality of always voting Republican. So it was kind of doing that. I think on the larger kind of question that she had asked, or he or she had asked, or they had asked, is in regards to the larger Asian community. I think what's I don't know. I'm gonna say this one carefully. Is I think I was more as an entertainment attorney. I was very involved in the Asian American community here. So if you were a K-pop artist in Korea and you needed a U.S. attorney, my name would always come up, because I was one of the very few K-pop attorneys that could do English and Korean, and so I was very involved. Like I have many friends who are like now like famous actors and whatnot, and so I was very involved in that community, and I helped them a lot with legal help. And so now kind of going into the political realm, I have some friends that are very supportive of it, but then some friends that just kind of we aren't in connection or communication or uh, kind of talking as much. And so I just kind of thought, is that because it's a political thing and because politics don't interest you? And I'm not generalizing for those who are watching, but it was just kind of like, oh, I guess politics doesn't interest my Asian American friends as much as they interest my non-Asian American friends as much. And that's just an observation. I'm not saying that's the case. It was just an observation that I made. And I thought, because initially when I was, before I actually threw in my hat to run for office, I thought, oh yeah, I can get my Asian American friends and community to start this whole campaign for me and help me to push to get out the vote. And like, before I threw in my hat, like, that was like, yeah, David, we can do that. And then after throwing into the hat, it was like, all right, guys, I need your endorsement. I need your support. Come on, primary elections coming up. It's coming up. And then there was nothing. And so, and I mean, it's not to say that I have any ill feelings, but it was just this observation of, oh, what's happening here? What's the disconnect? And what can we do about it? How can we mobilize everybody? Because it's not just about one community, it's about all communities stepping in. And I don't want the community that I was in to be left out because of that. And so how do we mobilize and engage more? And so I think for this general election cycle, hopefully we'll get everybody on board with the Asian community as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly if you look at older generations of Asian Americans, like there just historically has not been a lot of political activism. I think, at least when I just think about my parents, they voted, but they would not volunteer or get, really behind a campaign. And it was sort of thought of as like, well, that's some other people's business that they're running for office.
Yeah.
And we're going to focus on, putting food on the table and making sure you study hard for school or whatever. But I guess I wonder if with Andrew's campaign, I think it kind of started a little bit more energy around certainly younger Asian Americans. And hopefully it's great to see you running too. I mean, I remember when I was growing up, you would never hear of an Asian American running for anything, like maybe if they were in Hawaii, but like in the lower 48, very unusual. So, we're making progress, and hopefully you'll be breaking through some ceilings. Let me get to the next question, which is also about the Asian stuff, and then we'll go on to more general questions. Do you have a point of view on some of the kind of negative blowback against folks of Asian descent because of the Corona stuff? Like, what's your take on that? What's your point of view?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely uncalled for. I think racism, hatred, words that are expressed even in any relativity of degree to that is uncalled for and intolerable. So if you're ever witnessing it or near it, then always be the person to step up, confront it, take responsibility, and shut it down. But not to do it in a reactive state of hatred, because then you're also spreading the hatred, and you're using that spark of hatred that landed on you to expand that even more. And now you're just spreading that around. But kind of realizing beforehand, oh, this person or these groups of people or this statement comes from a place of hurt, insecurity, of trying to defend for themselves, because we're all in this we're in this time of uncertainty, and when we're being ushered into a period of uncertainty, like our human nature and our emotions it's natural to become emotionally reactive in that. And so to realize on a greater level, it's not just with me, but it's with everybody right now, and to look at that deeper, on a deeper level. And I'm not saying, oh, so David, do you think you should just overlook it and forgive them? No, like, call them out, tell them that's not right, and tell them not to do it ever again. And then also doing it though with from a position and a heart of love, because that's how we continue to build communities. Because people fuck up, like, they make mistakes. But no, Trump is not making a mistake. But in regards to that, like, give people a chance if they're able to show it. And if they fuck up again, then call them out again, and maybe you do need to distance yourself, and that trust is lost. But then at least the love is still there, because I think there's a difference between trusting and loving. And so I think if we're able to kind of come to a deeper sense of, dude, I didn't pick the way that I look. Like, I don't ever remember thinking right before I was formed in my mom's womb, oh, I want to be Asian, or I choose to be Asian. Like, I don't remember doing that. Do you remember doing that? Like, and so it's just kind of like realizing, dude, the fact that you look like in a particular way has nothing on you of who you are. It's just an outer shell. It's an avatar, like what James Cameron's movie is like. We're just these are just avatars, and I think we have to come to a point where we're looking deeper, and where we're not calling out and separating people based on the way they look. But then our system right now, with our criminal justice system, with everything, like, we have institutionalized forms of racism and hatred and oppression, and that's where we really need to stamp out and call it out. And as a side note, Tom, I actually remember I was running for and for me, like, justice always plays a huge game. And in law school, I had heard that our student funds were being misused, and I was like, oh man, do I have to run? And so then I ran for student body president, and our law school is all Jewish. And I remember my opponent his campaign slogan was, "Don't let an Asian become president." He would be the first non-Jewish student body president. Don't let that happen. And I was like, what the fuck? How in the world is, like, I mean, he didn't say, like, he told different people that were mutual friends, and so that's how I found out. But it was like, oh my gosh, like, nah, that's not how we should be right now. And I think if people are able to look beyond the skin color and whatnot, they're able to connect on a deeper level. And I think that's what we need to remind ourselves. Like, yeah, when you hear and see stuff in the news and media where somebody's showing hatred and racist remarks to your community or your friend's community, like, yeah, it hurts. It hurts. But then I think it's taking that pain and realizing how much it hurts, and realizing, oh, that person who just said it, or that group that just said it, they don't realize it, but they're hurting so much even more, to the point where they can't even realize that they're hurting right now. And it's coming to that deeper level of compassion. So when you're hurting, give yourself compassion first, and then recognize where they're at, call them out, say that that's not right, don't tolerate it, let them know that it's intolerable, but then also do it from a place of love, because with every word that we speak, there's energy that comes behind those words and impact each person. So I think that's very important to realize. And for those like I know that Andrew got some slack recently, and I can go ahead and address that too. Like, I mean, he and I his that first, I didn't read the response one to a close eye, but the first editorial, I mean, he talked about and brought up about kind of the anti-Asian sentiment and hatred and racism that was going on, but then he then briefly glossed over that and went to we can be better Americans and do this. When I read that, to be honest, Tom, my mouth dropped, and I was like, what the fuck? Like that type of paragraph that you put, we need to be more Americans, that comes in an editorial, like the second or the third one, like, or it comes out like after you've like written like 10 more paragraphs on addressing the hurt and the problem and understanding that pain and connecting with that pain and hurt. And then you do that paragraph. Like you didn't do any of that. Like you skipped 10 paragraphs that you should have gone through before going to that. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is just a mistake though. I mean, I'm not getting mad at him, because I'm not mad at him as a person, but just kind of mad at the situation where it's like, oh dude, you probably had staff or advisors that could have checked on your work, or like, or you could have asked somebody within that community what that looked like. But I mean, we all make mistakes. Will he do it again? I don't think so. And he actually did respond and say he does connect with that. I mean, I saw that he was very infuriated when that whole Trump ad came out with attacking Joe Biden and depicting Gary Larkin there as one of the Chinese. It's like, nah, fool, like he's the former Washington governor. What the, and like, and so Andrew, it's not to say that Andrew doesn't care for the people, but he does. And I think what people need to realize, like, Andrew hurts just as much as we do. Even if it's not his own community, he's still hurting and crying. Like, have you not seen the interviews and videos on his campaign trail where he's been crying for other people? Like, he's a person that is full of compassion. But I think, I don't know what the scenario and situations and the factors were behind that editorial, but that didn't accurately represent who Andrew was as a person. And so I think just that whoever his publicist team or media team is, they just need to just cross their T's and dot their I's better and do more due diligence. And so I think it was more that of a failure than him as a person, because we all know that Andrew's not that type of person. So, but was I enraged when I saw that editorial? Yes.
It's interesting. I read it twice. The first time I read it was when it first came out. I think he tweeted out a link to it, and it was before all of the kind of brouhaha happened. And I read it, and I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, you know." And it did not dawn on me. And then after everybody was really fired up, I read it a second time with sort of a different lens. And then I was like, "Oh yeah, I could see how this is kind of sounds a little bit like apologizing for being Asian and needing to kind of like, you know, re-earn your right to be in the country kind of thing." And certainly if that's the impression that it gave off, then it was a clearly badly written op-ed. And so, but I also read his book about the, you know, war on normal people, and he talks about being on the receiving end of a lot of you know, kind of marginalization when he was growing up. And I mean, we've all been there. So I doubt like he's I mean, when they were calling him, you know, the equivalent of Uncle Tom and that kind of thing, I was like, I don't know, man. I don't think I think he didn't write it well. He probably had a word count limit, and it didn't allow him to give proper,
so he like
you know,
took out that section.
yeah. But you know, you live and you learn.
Yeah.
Let's go on to the next question. As an immigration lawyer, what's your take on the Adoptee Citizenship Act to grant citizenship to international adoptees? Do you have a point of view on that?
I actually do not have a point of view on that. I mean, I think this is the first time, and I'll go definitely look more into that. And so, actor Benzinger, if you can message me, my email is david@davidkim2020.com. I would love to hear kind of where you're coming from in asking that question. And I mean, based on the surface level, will you support the Adoptee Citizenship Act to grant citizenship to all international adoptees? In regards to, I mean, if if we have members of our country being adopted from overseas, and I mean, obviously they should be granted citizenship because we're adopting them as being part of our families and communities, no matter where they are. And so I'm not sure. I'll go ahead and look into that as to what the details are, and then I can go ahead and correspond with you on that one later.
Cool. And we should give a shout out to Levin Chen, who became a max donor to your
Oh, crap.
campaign.
Yes. Thank
So,
you. Amazing. Thank you, Levin Chen. Max donor. So for those who don't know, max donor means $2,800. You can contribute max to any cycles for a candidate. So thank you so much, Levin.
yeah. And then
Cool.
Hannah is confirming that she does not want you on those tech calls anymore. That that I guess you're breaking the stereotype, David. You know?
Yeah. No, but I'm learning to let go, and it actually I think what because I also practice meditation and mindfulness, Tom, and what I tell people a lot, and what I'm also telling myself is when you let go, there's more freedom, but then like the actual letting go is hard. So it's like when Hannah's like telling me to get off that call, it's like, oh, I can't let go. Okay, fine, I'll let go. But it actually feels more free. So yeah.
Yeah, you have to give up a like sort of local freedom to get global freedom, but it's counterintuitive for sure.
Yeah.
I've been there. Yeah, struggle with it every day. So here's the next question: do you have some views that differ from Andrew's, or are you guys pretty much lined up on most things, or where do you differ, if anywhere?
Yeah, I mean, I think in regards to the first thing, I think is the fact that we have more similarities probably would outweigh the differences if you could paint it as a similar or different dichotomy in that sense. But because I don't think it's either or, I think every campaign and platform are different variations and expressions of themselves. But with Andrew, I think his was more focused and targeted on a national scale, as a national platform and scale. For us, ours is more fine-tuned to the district, but still relating that and making it relevant to the nation at a larger scale as well. But for us, it's fine-tuning that even more to what our constituents in our districts are and what our district is currently experiencing and suffering. So because we have per capita incomes of 12,000 or 15,000 in certain parts of our district, but yet the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment is over 2,000 a month. It's like these issues are more urgent for our community right now. So we're going to put a lot of emphasis on this. So that's why ending homelessness and a housing guarantee is on our platform. It might not be as relevant as it might be in a different community or part of the US, but for us, it's so urgent. And so I think kind of you see like democracy dollars on our platform, you see UBI on our platform, you see VAT tax, like there's different elements that are on our platform. But then in addition to the ones that you might not kind of spelled out see on Andrew Yang's platform, it's not to say that we clash or differ on it. It's just more fine-tuned for our district and our area that we're in. So so with that being said, I was going to say the thing that I think we do differ is Medicare for all. I am for Medicare for all. I know that he supports public option, but that's fine. Difference, that's fine. I think we probably overlap in so many other areas, so it's fine.
Do you think UBI would be a game changer for the homelessness situation in LA, or do you think it would be we actually need to do more than a basic income to address the homelessness stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not. I think with our district, I think it's so intricately involved with so many factors that are going in play. So UBI, I think would be one of the biggest transformations and revolutionary things to do for our unhoused neighbors, because now they're able to have something to be able to go purchase extra means that they need, or be able to even get food, and to be able to sustain themselves on a physical level. But then if we're able to get to a point where we're working with the zoning ordinances and regulations and relaxing them, and so where we're able to really do reform in our housing and development policies and our economic workforce, then and also providing wraparound services, then we're able to go ahead and do that on a kind of stage by stage process, because eventually we can get to a point where some of those unhoused neighbors are using their UBI to pay for their rent, or to help subsidize in a way, or to pay for their rent plus other costs. And so I think if we're able to go ahead and provide this as a relief, that's where our local and state and county officials would be like, oh, holy shit, this will actually help us. This made us think of doing these programs and moving the ball in these ways. And so I think if we're able to do that collectively and together, we can really come out to amazing solutions that some of us haven't even thought of yet. But then for us to get there, we actually need to take action and take that first step. But nobody's taking that first step right now. So
Cool. Yeah, no, it makes a ton of sense. Sugar Sweet wanted to know, speaking of this UBI stuff, are you supportive of pilots, like what's going on in Stockton? Like, how do you see basic income rolling out in the States? Is it through these local pilots, or do you go for some national stuff? Do you go for both concurrently? How do you see it happening?
well, I see it happening on a federal level. I mean, that's why I'm running for federal office. But I mean, I think it's totally doable on the state level for sure. If states really had that as their initiative and had that as their priority and goal, they can do it. And it's not like this kind of like loose-ended, oh, you can put your mind to it, you can do anything. It's not that at all. Like, I think every state is able to do it, but be able to find what that funding source is. For California, it makes sense that it is land. And some other types of sources of funding. But I think for California, for those who are not aware, there's a bill, I think Assemblyman Evan Lowe had put it in, where it's a UBI funded by, I think it was VAT plus some other, but I didn't really go into the details of that bill, because as soon as I heard that it was being only limited to certain demographics of California, or certain target audiences, where some people who are already receiving certain benefits or assistance can't be able to get it. It's like, nah, that's another form of means tested, but not, it's just a different variant of form of means testing. And I'm all against means testing. I think a basic income, if should be provided, should be universal, because who's to say that your arbitrary set and schemes of means testing is the absolute way to do that, when we have no idea what's going on to that detail in each of our individual citizens' lives, or residents' lives. And so I think that's where we become too, I think that's, I don't know if people realize that's where you're actually becoming a bit too controlling and invasive, or acting as the authority on what people's lives are. And I don't think we have that capacity to do that, or ability to do that. So give it universally to each person. So I'm not really fond of that. I don't know. I know I'll probably get some attack for that. I'm not really fond of that California bill, but if we're able to make it universal, and yes, there's pilots everywhere that are happening. We actually have, this is a good plug for those who are watching. After this ends, go take a nice lunch break, go rest. We have a town hall. My strategist thought the same way. We have a town hall at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time in 2.5 hours. We have Conrad Shaw, who actually did a UBI pilot, and we'll see what he talks about. There's certain things that he can or can't talk about yet, because it hasn't been fully disclosed to the public yet. But we have pilots everywhere, and they're working. And so it's good for you all to hear from those who've been researching. We have Scott Stanton's lead researcher, one of the leading figures of the movement, Stacy Rutland, co-founder of Basic Income Movement and the Basic Income March. We have these great people, so tune in at 3 p.m. Sorry for that plug.
Oh, no worries, man. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Well, David, I know we've been talking for a little while. Are there any other things that you wanted to hit that we haven't touched on yet?
No, I think it's just realizing that there's not a person that you have to look out for in terms of coalescing around, uniting around, congregating around. I think that person is you guys. So if you're watching this, like if you're looking for the next Bernie, the next Andrew, the next whoever it is, like that person is you, and you're the revolution. We are that revolution. It's not a cliche statement, because if you really tap into the power within you, and you tap into it so deep, and you're able to connect with that and have that lead you to wherever your chapter is in life, then you're fucking powerful. And I only say that to the testament of, I was able to let go of all my fears 10 months ago, when it came time to making 8 months ago, or whatever, how many months, when it came time to making that decision of, do I really go down this path? But I'm just this person who's never run for like a office like of this kind, and like I've been in my own community helping entertainment people with their legal stuff. Like, how I'm not qualified to do this, but like, yet I didn't have any qualifications, but I ended up freaking second in the primary election, and I'm freaking a general election ballot candidate this November 3rd, one-on-one against the incumbent. And so I think it's coming to this deeper realization of that you are fucking powerful from within, and if you're able to just connect with that and just go with it and let go, then you can create the revolution. So when I say, like, I tweeted this morning on Twitter, like, if you're reading this, go run for office against the nearest corporate sellout. Like, I'm not saying that for fun. Like, I really mean it. Like, you all can be running for office and should be requesting Tom to do an interview for you with you once you run. And like, that's what all of you should be doing. And I'm sure, like, if you tell Tom like that you are running, he'll probably have you on the show. So start that movement where you are. So those are my last words.
Right on. I have to ask you, David. You brought something up that that I thought was quite profound and heartfelt, which was the you didn't talk to your dad, and you were not talking for a while, and it also sounds like for the campaign he was also helped you get into a lot of churches and help organize maybe the loan. What was that transition like? I mean, of course, you called him to let him know that you're running. My dad's no longer around, but I can't imagine what that must have been like, not speaking to him for that period of time, and knowing, maybe that he didn't approve of, who I was or whatever. Can you share a little bit? Because I'm sure other people out there have been in a similar situation. And like, what advice would you give them if they're dealing with this kind of one of the most painful kinds of rejection I can imagine, which is, being pushed away by your own parents in some ways? Is there anything you could share for people who are going through that?
You confirmed my my views of your show. You asked like great questions. Yeah, I think. Yeah, sorry, you just went deep, so I'm like feeling stuff in my heart. Um, I think for those who are watching, I guess the reason why it took so long for me to come out to them was, I mean, firstly, I couldn't do it as a teenager, because knowing the type of parents that I have, then I would end up on the streets, and I didn't want to end up like a homeless teenager, without anywhere to go. And so for me, it was once I come to a point of independence, like geographically, financially. I mean, it doesn't have to be that way, but just for me and the dynamics of our relationship, that's what I thought was best for me. So even if you're listening and you're connecting with on some things, take things with a grain of salt. But I think for me, it came out to that point where, I think starting several years ago, I was coming to the truth of who I was and connecting with myself, where it's like, what am I doing accepting these blind dates from my parents? And like they're setting me up with pastors' daughters, and like and I'm like, yeah, so it was just so, and like kind of being in relationships with amazing women, like they're amazing women, like, but just lying to myself, lying to them, kind of realizing, is this who I am? Just an imposter and a liar, and I can't even stand up for myself. And I think that's where it really kind of came true was, are you powerful and truthful to yourself enough where you can stand up for yourself? And for me, that slowly started with telling friends several years ago. Then it came to a point where it's like, all right, I met this person and now I guess I need to tell my parents. And I told them, and it was not a good time at all. I mean, without going into the details, I I love my dad, I love my mom, but my dad's a big guy. He locked me in my car for 6 hours with my mom. My mom started throwing water on me from the back of the seat, uh, praying in Korean and screaming in Korean, asking the Holy Spirit to have the devil leave me, to have the demons leave me. My dad was going into a debate on apologetics with me, and why it wasn't right, and why I was letting the devil win. And so eventually, after 6 hours, I couldn't. I think it was like 4 a.m. We were in a parking lot, and every time I tried to leave my car, my dad would shove me back in. And for me, I'm not the type of person that would use physical force on my parents at all. So, so it was just for me, it was all verbal. So it came to a point where it's 4 a.m. and I just texted my brother and I was like, "Yo, Hyung, like, I've been in the car for 6 hours. Mom and dad won't let me leave. Can you please come down here because they keep on threatening me right now with various items." And so my brother came. Long story short, he allowed the situation to be so that I could leave easily. And so that was the last time I saw them for about 20 months, because the relationship became so toxic, just with the voicemails I would be getting every day, with the text messages I would be getting every day, with the calls I would be getting every day. And I'm not gonna share the comments that they gave, but they were some horrific, terrifying comments where every time I would try to actually read the whole text or listen to the whole voicemail message because I wanted to give that deference and respect to my parents. But it became and just kind of filter out the bad and just take in the good. But 99.9% of these messages were just filled with so much horrible stuff. So then, so to a point where I was crying every day and like, but then I think even though it hurt so bad, even though I cried so much during those 20 months and always had this fear of them showing up, I mean, even as a grown ass man adult, them showing up at my doorsteps and forcing me to move somewhere or whatnot, because that's how these Korean, or not all Korean households, but that's how some of our Korean households are controlled in this fear tyranny type of mentality. And so I think long kind of looking back, I'm proud of myself that I stood up for myself despite all the fears, because it was the scariest thing to ever do in my life. Probably the number one scariest thing in the world was to come out to my parents and to be in that car for 6 hours. So if there are any of you who are in that similar boat, like feel free to reach out to me, David at davidkim2020.com. We can talk about it. But like, it's important to stand up for yourself no matter what the costs are, because your freedom and your truth is what's most important. Yes, your family's important, and you're not betraying or forsaking them, no matter what they might say to make you feel manipulated and to make you feel bad, but to realize, oh, they're actually coming from a place of hurt themselves too, and going down a deeper level. Was it easy for me to forgive my parents day after day, forcing myself to do that? No, but I did it, because the more you say things and the more you try, your heart starts to crack open. And so I think it's realizing that for you, there's no one else that's going to stand up for you except you, and so that's what you need to do. So that's what you need to do for yourself, your family, your communities. And I think what's beautiful on that is, because I did the scariest shit in the world, now nothing else is scary to me. So the next step for me is like, I've actually gained my life back. I've gained my independence and freedom back. So like, nah, you're not gonna tell me that that's not possible. You're fucked up and you have excuses. Like, we need a rule for the people right now. So that's the mentality that we're going into DC with, and we hope to win this campaign.
Well, David, thank you so much for being really open and sharing. I think a lot of people who see this will be very moved and kind of empowered. And also, for some people who are going through this, it's important for them to know, like, there is a way to kind of get through it. And I'm guessing probably some people might in a similar situation may think like, well, there's just no way out of this. And here you are running for Congress, on the ballot, number 2 out of 5. And you're getting some help from your dad. So you guys are talking.
Yeah,
So
we're talking. Yeah.
That's progress.
Yes.
And I feel you, like my parents' generation as well. I remember my mom, she has a good friend, and that friend's one of that friend's children is gay. And they would talk about all this prayer therapy and what's going, like,
Yeah.
maybe they didn't go to church enough. And I'm thinking, like, there's nothing wrong with them. They're just, you're left-handed or right-handed, you're gay or straight or whatever. Like, it's just whatever. But that generation, that's just how they were wired for. And it's not, I mean, for many generations before that too.
And I get my parents. For them, like, if I were to put myself in, and I placed myself in their shoes every day, being able to understand that. And I think that's what we should be doing in all of our relationships, trying to understand the other person from where they're coming from. Because for me, looking at my parents, it was only the sense of, oh, they immigrated here in the early 80s from a very conservative Korea at the time. And then they came here because of their limited English. They haven't assimilated into mainstream society at all because they're in their Korean American bubbles or Korean bubbles at church. And so they're still in the 70s, 80s mentality, while the rest of Korea is even more progressive than they are. And so I get it. For my parents, it's like the end of the world, like the Antichrist was born into their family. But it's like, knowing that, it's like knowing where they're coming from, it's being able to have your compassion rise to meet that and to overcome that and cloud over all of that. And so I think that's what we really need, like, during this campaign cycle, is yes, there's all of this injustice, like this righteous anger part with it, but if it's not also supported by compassion, then this righteous anger movement will only go so far, because love fuels more. And that's why like my true wish, Tom, was like for Marianne Williamson and Andrew and Bernie to somehow create some coalition, and like those 3 are like my top. But in any case, so
well, I saw someone in the comments say that you are this interesting combination of Yang and Marianne and Bernie, and I see it. I see you've got quite a really fascinating kind of cocktail of a lot of what people like about Andrew and about Marianne and about Bernie. So I'm eager to watch your campaign closely, David. And let's for while we wrap up, let's go to your site here, David Kim. This is where we are, right? This is you. It looks like you. And then we got to click on the donate button.
Yes, do it.
Let's open up a new tab. Hold on, got to share that blue tab now. Oh, here we go. We got here. I'm gonna
it's colorful for you.
I'll do a 50. I'll do a 50, but I'm not leaving a tip.
Oh,
I can't do those tips.
Amazing! Thank you so much, Tom. Oh my gosh.
Well, dude, I have to say,
thank you.
I'm impressed with your. We don't know each other super well, but I'm impressed with your courage, and I'm impressed with your positivity. Like, it's very easy to react to a lot of things that we talked about with just like, to go negative. And you don't do that. And we need a little bit more of that in this country, and certainly in DC. So I could actually see you appealing to some, moderate Republicans who are also, want better things and better outcomes. And UBI, a lot of conservative economists have been advocating it for decades. So I think your platform could have broad appeal. And I really admire your courage. I mean, you could have easily taken a different path and just sort of conformed with what your parents wanted or what society wants, and you kind of stay true to yourself. You became an immigration lawyer, not some white shoe cravat lawyer, and so good for you, man. And I hope you kick some ass in DC and you get there. So thanks for coming on the show. And with that, I think we're going to say goodbye, nerds.
Yeah, goodbye, nerds.
Goodbye, nerds.
Goodbye.
All right, we're off the air.